Ms. Murtagh and I are going to be asking a few questions. They're all going to be the same questions for each candidate. They are different than the questions that we asked in the meeting that we had earlier with the candidates, and get to know our candidates much more intimately and learn a little bit more about what their vision may be for the city of Peabody and our school district. So thank you for being here. We've allotted about 45 minutes for each candidate, and we'll go from there, take short breaks in between. But again, great to have all of you here. And our first candidate did an excellent job in the interview. It's great to have him here today to learn more about him, Mr. Nathan Lamar. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Great. So why don't we just first start, kind of give you an opportunity to make an opening statement, why you're interested in the city of Peabody, and why did you apply for the principal job, and why are you the right candidate to lead us?
Okay, great. I came to education primarily through my parents. Both were teachers. They drove me in the direction of learning constantly. I grew up in a house where when you asked a question, you got an answer. No matter if that question was, why is the sky blue? My father was all but dissertation for his physics doctorate. And so I got the answer of why the sky was blue, no matter how long that took. And so I grew up with a passion for learning, and through time, that drove me into wanting to work with kids. And so I drove down the path of coaching, and then I wanted to get into education. And so I taught at Danvers High School for about 6 years, then moved into administration at Malden High School, and now I'm the academic coordinator over at Northeast Metro Tech. And what I would love to have the opportunity to do is expand my working with kids, expand my role, and have the opportunity to help drive a school in the direction that the community would like that school to go. I think that the stakeholders of every community should be able to look at their high school and say, that is our crown jewel. And I look at Peabody and I think that this is a great opportunity. I think that that's, when people talk about Peabody, they talk about Peabody High School. And I would relish the opportunity to be here. 3 things that I would just say about myself is, or 3 words. I believe in the power of 3 simple words. When I work with little kids in coaching and when I work with teenagers, I think the word yet is the most powerful word that anyone could know. A little kid can be dribbling a ball and say, I can't do it. And if they learn the word yet, they'll understand the tenacity that's necessary there. The second thing is I really believe in the tenet of all. That when we talk about education, we talk about our mission statement. The word all is in every mission statement, but if we don't truly believe it, we're going to limit how we treat our students. We're going to begin to see those kids or these kids or they instead of all. And when we are able to, as a school, embrace all our kids and see all our kids, we begin to drive forward in their learning. And the last thing is, the state has a mandate that every student graduate from high school, both college and career ready, not or. And I think one of the special things about Peabody is the CTE programs. And the ability to have a student leave here, both college and career ready, is something that should be available to every student. Every student should have that opportunity to be college and career ready, not or.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lamar. I have the next question. With a diverse student population of 1,430 and a staff of 130 wonderful educators and support staff, how will you build the trust and camaraderie amongst your leadership team, faculty, staff, and departments?
So the key word in that I see is camaraderie, right? If there is no vision, no unifying vision that takes into account every stakeholder on that list, then there is division. And so what I what I take from the question is that you have to build a vision that everyone can buy into, from staff to students to the community involvement as a whole, that you have an objective that you need to get to, and then you need to build strategically your plan to get there by unifying everyone in that united vision.
Thank you. I have a second part to that question. How are students going to know that you are vested in their health, safety, academic needs, and their school community?
The number one thing is visibility. Students have to see you to know you. They have to see you to know that you care. They have to be able to talk to you, and you have to be willing to listen. That means not just during the school day. That means at events. That means at car washes. That means anywhere. Students need to see you to get to know you. They also need to know that who they're seeing is the same person that they see every day. I love bringing my kids to football games, to basketball games, to let kids see me in a different light. Let them see me as a person. And I think what happens is that you build up that respect from students because they see you as who you really are and not just the principal of Peabody High School.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. I wanted to present a scenario to you. And if you want me to repeat it, please, or parts of it, let me know. You have just returned to your office at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School following a meeting outside the building, and you are handed 4 messages that are all marked important. First is a phone call from the mayor of the city who has a pressing question regarding the transportation budget. Number 2, a phone call from the police chief who needs to speak to you about a safety concern at the high school, in the high school cafeteria. Number 3, a phone call from a parent who is upset with the football coach about his son's playing time. And number 4, a phone call from a teacher who says she overheard 2 students discussing a potential bullying scenario on social media. In what order would you return the calls and why?
The question's a trick. No, there are the last two scenarios, playing time and potential bullying, are of essential importance to the parent, the student, the other student, the victim. But the potential of impact upon the school as a whole is not as great as the first 2, okay? And I would also say that you have a support team, that the administrative team on on the last 2, that you want to be able to rely on them, that has been vetted through the proper channels before it's getting to that point. And if not, then you're actually calling to talk to the football coach, talk to the athletic director, and say, hey, just got a call. Just want to know, make sure that this has gone through channels prior to me. The first one, could you repeat the first one? Oh, I'm sorry, it was you. You called.
That annoying mayor. Yeah.
The second one has to do with the safety of the entire student population, right? And while your phone call is of extreme importance and affects transportation, the safety of the students lies as the primary concern of of an entire school. It's not just the job of the principal, it's the job of every person in that school, from student to staff to administration, to provide a safe and secure environment. And so that's the first call that you make.
Okay, thank you.
Then I'll get back to you.
next one, it's an academic question. Peabody Veterans Memorial High School is a comprehensive high school. Our rigorous curriculum aligns to the mass standards. What steps will you take to ensure that our students are getting what they need to empower, enrich, and enhance academic achievement?
So I believe in bell-to-bell teaching. And I believe in it because I think in saying bell-to-bell, we are stressing the rigor and the urgency that's needed. We, especially for a CTE student, they're losing a lot of time in a day on the academic side, and they're gaining incredible skill on the vocational side, right? But that loss means that their time in their classroom is of extreme importance. They need every minute to be learning in their class. And so I truly believe that building urgency goes hand in hand with building rigor. That if you don't have those two pieces, you're gonna not have the third most important thing, which is engagement. If a kid isn't engaged in class, then they're not learning. A kid should want to learn, they should want to be engaged in it, and I think by having a focus on rigor and challenge and that urgency, it helps drive students to be more engaged in the learning that they're having.
Thank you.
Thank you, and this question kind of dovetails into your answer. For many years, Peabody offered our own on-site vocational training programs to high school students who wish to pursue careers in trades such as carpentry and automotive. When the decision was made a few years ago to join the Essex Tech Regional District, however, we could no longer offer those programs at Peabody High School. And while many Peabody students have been able to benefit from the outstanding vocational offerings at Essex Tech, many other students are not. Superintendent Murtagh and I, along with the school committee, are very concerned about those students that we feel are getting lost in our school system and in our in traditional college prep curriculum that may not be the direction they're looking towards. They are suffering academically and socially, and they need our help. We have partnered with the Essex Tech on a pilot program starting this year to offer a split schedule to some of those students. What ideas do you have to help reach those other students that are struggling to find their way?
I like that you saw that it dovetailed, because the student interest is incredibly important in education, right? If a student doesn't have an idea of why they're actually learning what they're learning, they become disengaged, right? And so being able to look at student interest, there's incredible programs, Project Lead the Way, that I've been involved with over at Northeast, partnerships with engineering programs from MIT and Tufts when I was in Malden. Those types of programs, developing maker spaces, those are all programs that there's funding out there for, and it taps into the idea that a kid has interest. And if we can figure out what that interest is and allow that freedom of learning, we're going to actually have them have more possibilities and engagement in their own learning. The Pathways to Success is a great thing that the state's looking at, and allowing high schools to become more comprehensive, allowing for that and to exist for that graduating student, right? That now you can have a culinary program at a school who never had it before. So I think what we're seeing is that that shift is developing, where we're starting to see how important the CTE programs are to engage students in their own learning. I think it's wonderful, the partnership that you have. I think the partnerships that we're having for early college are other great opportunities to be able to say to a kid, hey, you can be taking this course here because you're interested in it, and you don't have to pay. I think that's an awesome direction for us to be taking, of not saying that high school's the same. It's not the same for every student, and it's not the same as it was when I went there and you went there. It's changing. You know, virtual high schools, they exist, and virtual classes, and being able to tap into those as opportunities for kids to have that non-traditional course is a way that we ensure that kids are getting a rigorous curriculum, but also are engaged in it in order to then keep them with us through to the end.
Thank you. Question I have for you. Certainly, every community has been touched by the opioid epidemic that has swept across our nation. We've tried to implement and put in some tools here in the city of Peabody, a student-based health center. Could you kind of walk me through, once you were made aware of a student that was having trouble, their grades were failing, their attendance was spotty at best, how do you work with your team? How do you try to assist that student?
The saddest part, I think, in that question is that it's the question that's asked of a school to be the leader in that. And so I don't think that necessarily a school is that which helps that student. It is a community that helps that student. And the school plays, more often than not, that frontline role of being the first person to recognize what that student is, the changes in that student's behavior, attendance, things of that nature. But a school needs to have the partnerships with community programs, with resource officers, with school adjustment counselors, outside services, and the family to build that wraparound service to help that student break that pattern of behavior which has led to that addiction. There's the idea that says that we just need to get treatment. But if the pattern of behavior that's set up every morning where that student wakes up and has now got to the point where they're not going to school, just getting them back in school isn't going to be that which helps the student. We need to break the pattern of behavior which deviates them there from attending school. That we begin to work as a community to help that student get to where we want them to be, graduating and a contributing member to society and our community once they graduate. That's what we're looking for, is not just get them to graduate, not just get them through and not just get them back here, but we want them to be the very best that they can be. And that takes an entire community committing to that.
Great. Thank you. And again, you kind of lead into another question. What we started a few years ago, our school administration, our school committee, a community service requirement here at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, because I think we all felt that community should be a part of their experiences as a student. Can you talk about your thoughts on getting our students involved in the community? Have you been in part of programs like that in the past, and what do you think would be the value of that?
It's invaluable, right? I went, when I was 16, I actually went to Africa on a missions trip there, raised the money myself to go on this, didn't know anybody that was going, went, built a school when I was there. And here I am many years later, And I think about the impact that that had on me of being able to give radically changes who you are as a person. And I mean that in a way of that we have a tendency sometimes, and we as high school students have a tendency to forget that there is a world outside of us, and that we have a tremendous opportunity to give. And in giving, we gain so much. But more importantly, in giving, the progression of kindness moves forward, right? And so I think, the bare minimum is having community service programs. I think one of the greatest things that National Honor Society does is require that, right? But what I always see is the students that are doing that often are ones who it becomes infectious for, and they keep going, and they keep doing things that are really important to them that are so beneficial for others. So I think any program that is designed around community service is designed more for, should be designed more for the benefit of the community as a whole than just to meet a requirement. It should be something that allows for opportunities for authentic learning during the process, that a kid wants to do what they're doing and would even consider doing this beyond what they were doing first.
Great, thank you.
Want to ask for concluding?
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, we're going to do a concluding statement, and then we'll do next steps.
Okay. I said a lot of the things that I care about. The one thing that I haven't touched on that I would love to just throw out there is I seem to have, in my jobs, shown up at schools where they were either just starting the process of building a new school or just finishing up the process of doing the punch list and working through that. I know that Peabody High needs a new school, and I would love to be involved in that process. I've been involved in the committees to build a new school, and then I left Danvers. And I got to Malden, and the school had just been made. I would love to be involved in that middle, that middle process as well. I think Peabody is a wonderful community. I live close, and I would relish the opportunity of working here as the educational leader, as the principal.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. It's great to have this opportunity. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. So next steps in this process is we will continue our finalist interviews this evening, and the mayor and I will process things, and we will narrow things down, and we will do site visits will be the next step.
Okay, great.
Okay. So thank you for being here tonight, and I will show you this way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Have seats, it's fancy.
Again, good evening, everyone. Great to have you here. We are going to begin with interview number 2. Again, I wanted to thank our elected officials, our school committee members who are here today, and I also wanted to recognize John Turco, our council president, who's here as well. As I mentioned, we have 4 outstanding candidates today that we're going to get to know a little bit more in depth. And it's great to be able to welcome our second person today who did an excellent job in the original interview with our team, Jennifer Destefano. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Nice to be here.
So Ms. Murtagh and I are going to ask a number of questions for you, and then give you the opportunity at the end to maybe say some concluding words, closing statement, okay?
Okay, great.
If you have any questions while we're going, just please let us know. But first, let's just start, kind of give you an opportunity to make an opening and just ask, why did you apply for the principal job here at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and why do you think you're the right person to lead us?
Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Destefano. I am a 22-year public educator. I was a history teacher for 10 years in the Everett Public Schools and an administrator for 12 years in Everett, Beverly, and Salem. I've been living and working on the North Shore for the last 7 years, and that was one of the reasons that I was interested in applying for this position. When I went to come here tonight, I had to put in my GPS because I get lost everywhere that I go. So I put in Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and it's 2.1 miles from where I live. I live in Danvers right now with my 2 children. I have 2, well, I can't say 2 high schoolers anymore. I have one going off to college on September 1st, and my daughter's going to be a sophomore at Danvers High School. So teenagers and high school is kind of my life 24/7 nowadays. It was my life just during the workday, but in the past 8 years or so, it's been all the time. So one of the reasons I was interested in coming here is because of my connections in the North Shore. Between working in Beverly and Salem, I have lots of colleagues throughout the schools in the North Shore, so I have a lot of connections and a lot of familiarity with things that are going on in education kind of in this area. Additionally, doing some research into Peabody Veterans Memorial High School itself, I was really excited about the fact that there is a CTE program here with the Career Technical Education. I think that's something that a lot of high schools are missing, and there are so many students that benefit from that don't necessarily have access to it. So I was excited to have an opportunity to be part of a school that has programs and offerings like that. I think Peabody is also a very nice community where there's a lot of kind of close-knit feeling, family feeling, community feeling, and it's important to me that wherever I work, I'm able to make myself part of a community, to know the parents, know the students, know the things that are going on, and Peabody seems like the kind of place where I could put down some roots and make some long-term commitments to be here. Personally, why do I think I'm the best candidate for this position? One thing that I hope by the end of this evening that you will know about me is that I am passionate about doing what's best for students, doing what's right for kids, and making sure that all kids have an opportunity to have access and to achieve at a high level. And I can promise you that as the principal of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, I would work tirelessly to make sure that your students and all the students in the school had opportunities to excellent programming academically, athletically, through the arts, and social emotional learning as well. So I think I'm someone that you could trust with your children because I am passionate about doing what's best for kids, and I'd love to have the opportunity to do that here in Peabody. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stefano, with a diverse student population of 1,430 and a staff of 130, how would you build trust and camaraderie amongst your leadership team, your faculty, staff, and departments?
Okay. So I think that trust and camaraderie are probably 2 of the most important things in having a well-functioning school. It's hard for people to work together effectively and efficiently if they don't feel like they can trust each other and that they're on the same page and working towards the same goals. So as a newcomer to the school, it would be incumbent upon me to really do the best that I could to get to know the members of the community, including leadership team, students, staff, community members, and to let them get to know me. I think especially sometimes as the principal of a school, it's easy to not be as outgoing or as accessible as some other members of the school, so I think it's important to prioritize accessibility and openness to all the members of the school, not just the leadership team, but to all the staff, all the students, parents. One way that I like to do that is, taking it upon myself to find ways to try to make connections and form relationships with people. So, whether that is being in the cafeteria and in the hallways, saying good morning to people and greeting them, saying good afternoon at the end of the day, being present at school events and community events so that people see you as a member of the community, and learning about people. Education is a person business, right? I always tell people I'm in the kid business. And that means that it's not just about knowing, the data and the numbers and the curriculum, but it's about knowing your kids and knowing your staff, because it's a really individualized process, educating a person. So I think it's very important to get to know people on a personal level as well as professional. And that doesn't have to be super personal level. It can just mean knowing, who's having a wedding coming up in their family, or who's expecting a child, or who has, a parent that they're caring for, and sharing that amongst the adults in the building so that we all kind of have that sense of knowing each other. On a bigger scale, it's so that we can all have the same focus and the same goals, that we're all doing, putting our efforts and working towards what's best for our students and improving the school. So I think to get people energized and comfortable and trusting, that's the best way to work effectively and efficiently.
Thank you. The second part of this question
Yes.
is, how are your students going to know that you are vested in their health, safety, academic needs, and their school community?
Okay. Well, for me, the students are the reason that I'm here, right? They're the best part of this job. They're the reason that I became an educator. They're the reason that I decided to move into administration, and the reason that I get up and go to school every day. So for me, getting the kids to know that I'm invested in them is actually, I think, a little bit easier than convincing the adults sometimes. I love to be in the hallways talking with the kids. I like to ask them, hey, what's that song you're listening to? Let me hear it. How'd you do in the soccer game? And I think kids really respond when they feel like you're interested in them beyond what class they're in and what their class rank is and, who's their English teacher. So for me, conversations, real meaningful conversations with students are my favorite part of being a high school administrator. So I think, the students would know because they'd be able to feel my enthusiasm, they'd see me and hear me asking them about, the different parts of their life, whether it's their health, their safety, academics, or any of those topics. The other thing is, kids are really hard to fool, right? They can tell when you're not being honest, and they can tell when you're not being sincere. So I think that with students, it's not just how you talk to them, but it's your actions. It's how you treat them. It's how they see you treating their peers, how they see you interact with their parents or their teachers. And, they're very good at getting a read on who a person really is. And I think that's important because I want my students to know that, ultimately, as the principal of the building, I see myself as the biggest advocate for every student in the building. A lot of students are very fortunate that they have strong advocates at home, whether it's parents or grandparents or, family and community members. But there are a lot of kids who unfortunately have to do a lot more advocating for themselves. And I want those kids to know that they can just as easily come and ask me to help them with something, as they would ask any teacher or, anyone who was a strong adult in their life. When I was teaching my last few years in the classroom, I worked in an at-risk dropout prevention program at Everett High School, where I had basically kids who were 1 foot in school and 1 foot on the way out, and a lot of them didn't have a lot of support at home. And I can remember probably, an afternoon in March having 3 boys come back after school and say, "Miss, will you help us do our taxes? We don't know how to do our taxes." And we worked and we heard there's this thing called a refund that we can get, but we don't know how to do it. So I said, all right, well, let's sit down and do your taxes. So, I'm not above doing any of those kinds of things that kids need to be successful, not just in school, but in life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a scenario for you,
Okay.
and please just ask me to repeat it if you'd like me to.
Okay.
You have returned to your office at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School following a meeting outside the building, and you are handed 4 messages that are all marked important. The first is a phone call from the mayor of the city who has a pressing question regarding the transportation budget. The second is a phone call from the police chief who needs to speak to you about a safety concern in the high school cafeteria. Number 3, a phone call from a parent who is upset with the football coach about his son's playing time. And 4, a phone call from a teacher who says she overheard 2 students discussing a potential bullying scenario on social media. In what order would you return those calls and why?
Okay. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but based on kind of my opinion, the first person I would call back would be the police chief. School safety is of the utmost importance, and if the chief of police is taking time to call about a safety issue in the cafeteria, I would want to call him back right away and make sure that it wasn't something that was an immediate pending situation. So I would always err on the side of addressing safety and security first. The second message I would return would be to the teacher regarding the bullying situation. Because again, that ties to student safety, and I've been doing this for a long time. There's a good chance that when I talk to the police chief about what's going on in the cafeteria, it might have something to do with this bullying that the teacher overheard. So I would want to talk to the teacher right away and find out if those 2 issues were connected, or at least, if they were not, I could direct the teacher as to do they need the adjustment counselor? Do they need the school counselor to work on the bullying situation? Do I need to ask my assistant principal or one of my deans to handle that? My third call in that case would then be to you, Mr. Mayor, regarding the transportation budget, to find out if there was something pressing that was affecting us immediately. And then my last call would be to the parent about playing time in football. And the reason that I would put the parent last in this situation is because most likely the issue regarding playing time is something that's least on my plate. I would want to pass that on to the athletic director or to the coach. That's not something that the principal would normally be involved on. Also, I would want to make sure that I had enough time to talk to the parent. If I called them first and I knew I had those other 3 phone calls that I was waiting to make, I might not be able to dedicate as much time as they needed to explain the whole situation to me. So I would probably sometimes I save the calls that I know could be the lengthiest for the end so that I could give as much time as that person needed. And the other 3 that you mentioned in the scenario seem to be of a higher priority to the whole school rather than just one specific individual.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is an academic question.
Okay.
Peabody Veterans Memorial High School is a comprehensive high school. Our rigorous curriculum aligns to the Massachusetts state standards. What steps will you take to ensure that our students are getting what they need to empower, enrich, enhance, and improve academic achievement?
Okay, so could you just repeat, what steps would I take to
Ensure that our students are getting what they need to empower them as learners, enrich, enhance, or improve academic achievement?
So in a comprehensive high school or in any high school, I think in order to ensure that students are getting what they need to empower and enrich and enhance their education, you have to first look at what is the curriculum that's being taught. So, Massachusetts is kind enough to give us an abundance of state standards to rely on, and I think it's important to make sure that we're offering courses that are aligned to those standards and that we offer a variety of courses that give kids opportunities to interact with those standards in a variety of different ways. So although we have, our sort of basic English 9, 10, 11, 12, and your math continuum and things like that, I think it's important to look at what you offer and see are there new and interesting electives that you could offer to students that will be relevant to what they see as their future goals, their future dreams and hopes and aspirations for themselves, and that can allow them to really feel empowered and engaged with what they're learning, and to stretch themselves beyond just mastering kind of those, requirements that we tell them that they have to learn, or that the state tells them they have to learn. So I think one of the first steps I would take would be to take a really in-depth look at the program of studies and the curriculum that's being offered at the high school, to make sure that, number one, we're offering all the things that we're required to offer to meet the graduation requirements and the state mandates, and that we're teaching kids what they need to know to pass MCAS or to be successful on SATs or whatever other exams they might have to face. But then in order to kind of increase achievement and increase engagement and really do that enhancing and enriching that is so important, that's where I think you have to be creative and think outside of the box a little bit and look for courses that don't exist right now, or that maybe could be changed a little bit so that kids are excited about taking them. So whether that's offering more project-based courses, or sometimes some interdisciplinary courses, where the science teacher and the history teacher are working together and they're teaching a class that's about like the history of robotics or something like that off the top of my head, where kids are not just learning the science piece, but they're also thinking about it in a different way. Or if it's project-based work, where at the end of the course the kids are producing some type of an item or an artifact that shows that they've understood the skills and the concepts that we wanted them to get. When I think about the students that are entering, so our freshmen that will be coming in next week will probably be in the workforce somewhere till about, say, 2075 or so. Right? If you think about that, that's kind of crazy. But what can we do to prepare them for a job that they might take when they're 40 in, 25 years from now, that maybe doesn't even exist right now? When I was in high school, I couldn't have told somebody, I think I want to be an app developer, because there was no such thing as an app developer. So my high school teachers never could have prepared me to be an app developer. And there'll be some kind of job out there that Peabody High graduates are going to want to have that we can't even imagine right now. So beyond making sure that we're offering them the content and the concepts that prepare them for their future to ensure that they get what they need, we have to find ways to give them the skills and kind of the habits of mind that will help to get them where they need to be. So if that's things kind of like flexibility, being adaptable, being able to be part of a team and collaborate, being able to work with peers and to problem solve, because there's no way that we can possibly give them all of the facts that they're going to need for their future. So we have to do the best we can to give them the skills that they're going to need for their future. And I think, academically, looking at your curriculum in the classrooms and in your CTE shops, you have to make sure that you're giving kids the opportunity to practice those skills that'll be the things that will make them successful in their future. Because some of the jobs that we're teaching kids now, right, they probably won't even exist by then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thinking about the year 2075 kind of freaked me out a little.
Right? It's true, though. I thought about it today. By the time these high school kids will figure they're, enter the workforce, this year's graduate's 2020. If they work for 50 years, that's 2070.
Yes, it is.
And that makes them 68. Retirement age will probably be 75 by then.
Jeez. Well, thank you for that answer. And I have a question for you.
Sure.
For many years, Peabody offered our own on-site vocational training programs to high school students who wish to pursue careers in trades such as carpentry and automotive. When the decision was made some years ago to join the Essex Tech Regional District, however, we could no longer offer those programs at Peabody High School. And while many Peabody students have been able to benefit from the outstanding vocational offerings at Essex Tech, many of our other students do not. Superintendent Murtagh and I, along with our school committee, are very concerned that these students are getting lost in a traditional college prep curriculum. They are suffering academically and socially, and they need our help. We have partnered with the Essex Tech on a pilot program beginning this year to offer a split schedule to some of these students. What ideas do you have to help reach those students that are struggling?
Okay. That's very exciting about the split schedule program.
Yes.
That ought to provide some challenges in logistics to work out as well.
Yes.
Maybe that's why you were calling me about the transportation budget. I think the students that you're talking about are, for me, the students that I'm most passionate about working with, because I think there are some kids who are motivated and they are, highly intelligent and they're focused and they know what they want to do. And I used to say when I was a teacher, it didn't matter if I was the teacher in front of them or who was there, those kids were going to succeed, right? And then there's some other kids that, really need a lot of specialized help, whether it's kids that have learning difficulties or kids that are struggling with other things, and they tend to get a lot of support, whether it's through special education or other special services. But sometimes there's this group of kids in the middle who are kind of your average kids, and maybe they're not super motivated, but they don't fall into that area where they're getting tons and tons of eyes on them. So it's easy for some of those kids to fall through the cracks. So I think that really that strong middle is where sometimes we have to focus our attention if we want to make some wide-reaching changes and some wide-reaching improvements. So I go back to kind of what I was talking about in the last question about making sure that you're offering a curriculum that is engaging and relevant to all students. So there are some kids who maybe, taking Mandarin is really exciting and they want to try that. And there are other kids who couldn't care less about it. But maybe they're really interested in taking a class on, electrical engineering or something that they like science, but they want to do something a little more hands-on. Maybe they want to do an electronics class where they're going to be, building circuits and doing things a more hands-on way. So I think sometimes it's about the type of courses that you're offering, and sometimes it's about the pedagogical methods that the teachers are using in class. So I think for a lot of students, especially, those of you that are parents of teenagers know, getting them to sit still and listen to somebody else talk, not through headphones or YouTube, for 45 or 50 minutes is challenging, right? So it's very hard to expect a room of 25, 16-year-olds to sit and listen to a teacher at the front of the room giving instruction. So in most cases, people have moved from that sort of stand and deliver at the front of the room to doing things that are more engaging, more hands-on, more student-centered. So I think to kind of capture the attention of that middle group of kids that might be falling through the cracks, if we can't offer everybody the courses, it's awesome that we're going to be able to get some kids to go over to the tech or some kids to take, some of the programs that we have here in the school. But to make sure that those academics meet their needs in the fact that they're, teaching to multiple learning styles. So it's not just somebody always talking. Maybe it's kids using their Chromebooks to interact with the content. Maybe it's students engaging in a debate or other types of academic discourse so that they're wrestling with the material. They say whoever's doing the talking is doing the learning. So if the teacher's the one doing all the talking at the front of the room, or most of the talking, and the kids are not really engaged, they're not always getting it. So I think supporting the staff in finding new and exciting ways to get kids to be engaged and interact with the content and concepts that we're teaching goes a long way in trying to kind of light a fire under some of those kids that are in the middle group.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Certainly, I've learned, and I think all of our teachers have talked about it, is the teaching profession has expanded quite a bit, where it's not just being in front of a classroom and going through coursework. There are social, emotional challenges that certainly are presented to our educators, our administrators, and one of those has been the opioid epidemic.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we as a city have been trying to provide resources, trying to provide tools to combat this epidemic, and we have a school student-based health center here. Can you talk about or walk us through how you would handle a situation where a student is struggling? You've heard information that drugs are an issue and their attendance is suffering. How would you go about working with that child?
I think this scenario that you described is one of the most challenging things that we face, especially at the high school level, because kids have a lot more independence and a lot more freedom from their parents knowing what they're doing all the time, or from anybody knowing what they're doing all the time. And having a conversation with a parent about this is very difficult. I think if I had a student that, I was noticing his or her teachers were noticing, the nurse was noticing, attendance was dropping off, their behavior was indicating some red flags related to drug use, that regardless of how difficult it is incumbent upon me to reach out to the parent and ask them to come in and sit down and talk with me, and have what I would assume would be a very difficult conversation, where I would want them to know that I was calling them not because their son was in trouble or that I thought he was a bad kid, but because I was worried about his health. And that if it was my child, I would want their school to tell me if they thought that my son had a problem that I didn't recognize. So as difficult as that might be to have a parent come in and say, I asked you to come here today because I'm really worried about your son. This is what I'm seeing. And in my experience, sometimes those things can be indicative of a student who's using drugs. And ask them, have you ever been concerned that maybe he's using? And, I have had those conversations with parents, unfortunately, and sometimes, they'll say, like, absolutely not my son, I know he doesn't use, and, I would never make an accusation where I said, well, I think you're wrong, I think, that's not my place, but I would say, this is what we're observing, based on our professional experience. Sometimes that can indicate a student that's using, and we have lots of resources that we can direct you to if you feel like that's a concern for your child, and provide them with whatever referrals to our adjustment counselors, to the school-based health center, to community outreach organizations, whatever local services are in the community that might support them. And then obviously, as the parent, it's their decision where they take it. But I've also had conversations that have started the same way, where the parent is then crying and saying, I know, and I don't know what to do. What can I do? And, it's very hard, but I think, if we know something is potentially going on that's very dangerous to a young person's life, it's incumbent upon us to share that with their parent, because they might be doing a really great job hiding it from mom and dad. I mean, that's part of the problem with the opioid epidemic and with drug use, is that people become very adept at hiding it. And sometimes as a school, we have more kind of a view into what's going on in the kid's life than the parent does. So, as difficult as it would be, I would want to have an open and honest conversation with the parent. I would also want to talk to the kid and say, listen, I've noticed the same thing. I've noticed this, and this. I'm not saying that you're doing something, but sometimes when we see this behavior with kids, it's because they're having a problem with substances, And, a lot of times the kid will say no, or they might say, yeah, you're right. I used to just smoke weed every day, and now I tried this, this, and this. And then referring them to the proper people to get help. But I think if we don't acknowledge it and pretend that we don't see it, we're not helping anybody. And it might be the easiest thing to do because it doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not the right thing to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is regarding community service. We instituted the City of Peabody a community service requirement to graduate from Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. Wanted to ask you if that's something that you have been a part of in your experience, and do you see the value for our students in having that additional component as part of their education?
How many hours are they required to do?
10 per year, 40.
Okay. So in my experience, my own children have to do that at Danvers High School. They have to do 40 hours of community service before they graduate. They don't have to do, it doesn't have to be broken down 10 a year, but they have to come to 40 by the end. And For my kids, I thought it was wonderful. I liked seeing them have to plan and think about it, and it helped them to explore their interests more. Both my children are student athletes, so they were very excited to go volunteer at the Little League or to go do the scoreboard at the youth basketball games, to run youth clinics. So I think it was a good way for them to have to give back to the community, but also for them to explore areas that they were interested in. And on the other end, especially in the vein that they went, the younger kids love seeing the high school kids come and be involved. And I think a lot of students take opportunities to do their community service hours within the district. So they might go volunteer at field day at one of the elementary schools, or they go, did face painting at the middle school when it was their graduation. So I think it's a good way to build connections in the community as well. So, everyone can learn from service. Service learning is important, and no matter how you slice it, whether it's something, that seems kind of carefree, like volunteering at a youth sports event, or if it's something that's a little bit, makes them maybe have a bigger worldview, if it's, volunteering at a homeless shelter or going and working at a hospital and working with the elderly. So I think it's what kids make of it. You can make it a really big experience or a small one, but I think what it offers to the community and the members of the community that the high school kids interact with is actually more valuable, especially from the high school administrator or the district's point of view, because everyone is always able to point out when a student from Peabody Veterans Memorial High School makes a mistake somewhere in the community, right? That's easy to identify, and not just in Peabody, in every school, right? Everyone notices when kids make a mistake, but they don't always notice when kids are out there contributing. So I think if you have kids, volunteering to shovel at elder services, or kids that are at City Hall working as an usher, greeting people at the front door, that's a way for members of the community to look and be like, oh my goodness, look at all this great stuff that Peabody High kids are doing. So I think besides it being a learning opportunity for the kids and contributing to the community, it's kind of a good PR push for the school and the district, because it helps us. We know that our kids do great things, but sometimes the community doesn't see it, and it's a way to get that out there for the community to see all the good things that our students are doing.
Thank you for answering our questions tonight.
Okay.
So at this time, if you'd like to make a closing statement.
Okay. Okay, so in closing, thank you for having me here this evening. It was a great opportunity to address you and to have a chance to talk a little bit more in depth with the two of you. I'm very excited to have made it to be a finalist in this process. I'm very interested in having an opportunity to work here with the community and with the two of you, and hopefully meet the staff and students. I'm looking forward to whatever comes next, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next steps, looking forward, the mayor and I will process our finalist interviews and narrow it down. And it would either be a site visit or another meeting with us. So we will let you know one way or the other, hopefully within a week or so.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Okay, if I could get everyone's attention. Again, thank all of you for being here, and I'm very happy to have our third interview, another candidate who distinguished themselves during the interview process, and very happy to have him here today to learn a little bit more about you and what you think of our school system. So my pleasure to welcome Matthew Poska to join us today, and we're going to ask you a few questions, both Kara and I, and give you the opportunity at the end to make a little closing statement, or certainly ask questions of us. But great to have you here.
Thank you.
So why don't we start off, kind of give you an opportunity to make a little bit of an opening statement. What interested you in the position as principal of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School while you applied, and why do you feel that you are the right candidate to lead us forward?
Sure, certainly. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. It's certainly a bit journey. I come from a family of educators. In some ways, it's the family business, the way it's set up. And I always thought I was going to be a teacher coach. I was fortunate to start my career. I taught for 8 years in Lynn at both the middle school and high school level, where I also did a significant amount of coaching as well, involved in athletics. And I thought I was going to be a teacher coach my entire career. And opportunities arise, and you get fortunate. And then I was fortunate enough to become, assistant principal and athletic director at Saugus High School, and then went on to Beverly High School and is a assistant principal as well. And at that point, I thought my path was I was going to be a high school principal, and I was excited about it. And lo and behold, an opportunity came up to be the middle school opening in Beverly opened up at the time, and I was encouraged to apply for it, and I was successful in that venture. And I'm entering my 14th year there in Beverly at this time, so a significant period of time. But I think I've always had the opportunity and been looking for the chance to become a high school principal. It's been certainly gnawing at me. I miss the connections with the student activities and all the things that occur at a high school. So when Peabody opened up and the opportunity to be part of the pride and tradition of the Tanners is exciting for me. And it's right down the street. I grew up in Lynn. I'm well aware of what Peabody is all about, and the opportunity to stay in this area and to be part of it and to hopefully be part of something special here is exciting to me, and that's why I was put my hat in the ring for this candidacy, and I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about me and learn a little bit more about Peabody.
Thank you. So with a diverse student population of 1,430 students and a staff of 130, how will you build trust and camaraderie amongst your leadership team, the faculty, staff, and departments?
Being in education is not an easy profession. One of the things I've said to people, if this was so easy, and we're doing the interview process, there'd be lions out my door looking to get into the building, and there's not a lion out the door to get in. So I certainly understand how challenging the profession is, and having taught before, having taught in a diverse community before and growing up in Lynn, I certainly understand the challenges that we have as educators. But I believe that as educators, we got into this profession to positively impact student achievement, and I think we have to keep that out as our foremost goal as we go forward here. It certainly aligns with some of the vision statement that I saw about students first here in Peabody, and I think that's so vital, because that's why we started this profession. We wanted to pursue it and work with students on a regular basis. With the idea of staff, understanding that you've been in the classroom setting before and knowing the trials and tribulations that go on in a classroom, it's important to start building those relationships and getting to know people as individuals. And that only comes from being out and about and being visible. You can't stay in your office. You need to be out in the hallways. You need to be in the cafeteria. You need to be at the performances, on the athletic fields. And you need to be interacting with staff to learn about them and learn about them as people. And it's no different than what we really do with our students in some SEL, and I'm sure there'll be an SEL question later on, but it's certainly the same type of component, getting to know staff and understanding what it's all about so we can work together. As we identify what our school and district goals are, it's vital that as a building leader and as a district leader that our school goals are aligned with our district goals, and we provide the necessary support and professional development for our staff to be successful in the classroom, because this is a constantly evolving process. I had a really interesting conversation about a year ago at this time, when we just went through a building process in Beverly, and one of my staff, an exemplary staff member, an outstanding teacher, came to me, and I had always said during the whole process that you can't pick up, as we went through the process, you can't pick up your classroom on 7 Sawyer Road and pick it up and just place it on 502 Cabot Street and think you can continue to do the same thing that you've done in the past. We have to evolve, we have to change. And he came to me probably, right before school started or right after school started, I forget exactly what, and he said, you continued to say that to the staff for a number of years, and he goes, I nodded my head a lot and said, yeah, I get it. And for this first month that we've been in here in the new building, he goes, it really hit me what that's all about and how we have to change and what that means. So supporting, here's a staff member who I thought was exemplary and really got it in how they struggle to adapt to change. So I think with the way education is right now, it's important that we support all of our staff as we kind of enter into this, constant evolution of what is best practice and what is it that our students needs, because it's not one size fits all.
Thank you. And the second part of that question is, how are students going to know that you, as their building principal, are vested in their health, safety, and academic needs, as well as their school community?
Whoops, sorry. I think one of my evolutions as an educator has been kind of the understanding of social emotional learning and understanding, what that's all about. Certainly we always thought that, the importance of the content and the curriculum is still there, and it's still there, and I don't want to underestimate that. But the importance of getting to know students is so vital. We need to be able to develop those relationships with students, let them know that we care about them, no different than what we would do with our own children. They have to know that we care about them as individuals, and it's a message that we're constantly talking about, and it's hard because when you have 100 plus students that you're responsible for and working with, trying to get to know all those students as individuals is a challenge. There's no doubt about it, but I think once those students know that you care, they know who you are as a person, they know who you are as an individual, they will rise to the occasion. As we're about to start the school year, it's one of the messages that we'll mention to our staff is the fact that it's important that take the time out to develop those relationships with students and get to know who they are. Once you get to know who they are, the content will follow. Students will run through a wall for you once they know that you know them and that you trust them. And again, that starts with being visible and constantly being out there, out and about, and getting to know who they are, going to their events, knowing that you're invested in them and their community. I think there's opportunities really built in to the high school to continue to do that, particularly with the transition from grade 8 to grade 9, investigation of possibly a freshman academy to ease that transition piece there, and an opportunity to develop some advisory programs to implement more of this SEL curriculum to support the needs of all of our students.
Thank you. Mr. Poska, I have a scenario for you, and I'm going to read it. If you'd like me to repeat it, just please ask.
Sure.
You have returned to your office at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School following a meeting outside the building, and you are handed 4 messages that are all marked important. The first message, a phone call from the mayor of the city who has a pressing question regarding the transportation budget. Number 2, a phone call from the police chief who needs to speak to you about a safety concern in the high school cafeteria. Number 3, a phone call from a parent who is upset with the football coach about his son's playing time. And 4, a phone call from a teacher who says she overheard 2 students discussing a potential bullying scenario on social media. In what order would you return the calls, and why?
It's a typical Tuesday, I guess. So, I would start out by addressing the bullying scenario first. When you have a situation such as that, particularly with the evolution of social media, that can escalate rather quickly. So the opportunity to jump on a situation like that, to address it in a timely and efficient manner, I think is really important, depending upon how the situation is and what it's all about. I think secondly, I would be calling the police chief to talk about the safety concern in the cafeteria. I have to assume if it was a real safety issue that everyone would be barging into the cafeteria, but I think if it's calling me to let me know that there's a concern, it's an important opportunity to call him back and to coordinate that meeting with the school resource officers as well to address what those concerns are. Thirdly, I'd be calling the mayor back to talk about the budget, because there's an opportunity probably for that to evolve into another meeting to address those concerns and how we would move forward to develop that budgetary issue. And then lastly, I would be calling the parent back about the playing time for the football. As a former coach, I believe there's things in place, when the coach has their preseason meetings, talk about the protocol to go through. If there's questions or concerns about that, I think that would be supported by the athletic director. And I believe that, at the high school, in particular at the varsity level, there's an opportunity to play to win, and the best players have to play at that time. So I think there's an opportunity to address that through the coach and the athletic director, and I'd be that last part of it, but it's an important part to support our coaches and what they do on a regular basis.
Mr. Poska, I have the next one, and it's about student achievement. Peabody Veterans Memorial High School is a comprehensive high school. Our rigorous curriculum aligns to the Massachusetts state standards. What steps will you take to ensure that our students are getting what they need to be empowered, enriched, enhanced, or improve academic achievement?
I took an opportunity before to talk about the importance of SEL, and I do believe it starts out with an SEL component in the sense that if the students know you care, and the content will come after that. You can implement content and the standards after they understand that you care. If there's no buy-in, if the students do not understand that you care about them, then it's going to be a challenge for all parties involved. So first and foremost is that SEL component, which is why I was happy to be able to address that first, but that's an important part of this curriculum as well. Next is the idea to kind of discuss the idea of classroom instruction and best practice. As I said before, it's important that we provide our staff with the support and the professional development necessary to implement best practice on a regular basis. Within the curriculum, the content, it's important that we're preparing our students for the 21st century, and we're implementing 21st century skills throughout our curriculums. And really would start with the 4 C's of communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. I think I'd start with communication because it's really important that the students are able to communicate in multi-modes, whether it be orally, in a written fashion, or in presentation mode to demonstrate what they know or are able to do. The other aspects are equally as important, and what I also like to mention, for me personally, what I like to see more of is the importance of implementing perseverance, resiliency, and reflection into that curriculum as well. Previously, these have been referred to as soft skills, but at this point, there's nothing soft about them. They're very hard skills, and these skills are certainly transferable to the real world and to college and career readiness. In order for that to happen, we have to make sure our curriculum aligns with that, and our instruction aligns with that. So I'd start with some instruction aspects of that, and the idea of making sure all of our students have access to that curriculum. So it's important, have universal design for learning, in particular talking about inclusive practices for all of our students. I think it's important that all students have an entryway into the curriculum, whether it be our at-risk students or our AP students. We need to be able to challenge them and empower them with their curriculum. We talked about the importance of the curriculum and getting to know students, and students want to learn by doing. They don't want to be passive learners, they want to be active learners. Project-based learning opportunities offer students the opportunity to delve in, to again have an opportunity with a question based upon the standards, a driving question that the students can interact with and come up with a solution to a real-world problem. Those types of scenarios and that type of learning really engages students, and I think there's an opportunity for more of that. We want to give all of our students the opportunity to, no matter who they are, to be leaders, to be innovators, and to be problem solvers in the classroom and out of the classroom. Next, I think we need to have an opportunity to take a step back and talk and look at our program of studies to make sure our program of studies aligns with what we want, the pathways that our students are embarking upon. We have 6, I was able to look at the program of studies, and I think, one of the first phrases on it is believe and achieve. I think that sends the message of hope and opportunity and optimism, enthusiasm. So no matter the path that you're going down, whether you're the pathfinder, it reminds me of my wife. My wife enjoys hiking, and she's always, and I might not be the greatest outdoorsman in the world, but, she's always saying, you hike your own hike. And I think you have to find your own hike and your own path. Being able to communicate the global aspect of being a global thinker, you know, both at the local level, the national level, and the global level, and how you're going to use technology. The importance of the arts, a team player, effective communicator, et cetera. I think those are a variety of the paths that were listed within the program of studies. And as you get into that and look at the electives that are there, the electives that are there allow students the opportunity to choose their own path and to get that experience down that path. A quick example would be the opportunity I saw there was a journalism course or a sports writing course. Tremendous opportunities and tremendous interest level for varied students. But how do they put that into action? Where's the doing that's there? The same thing with the STEM and the STEM piece. I saw something about coding and programming. Again, they get to experience the aspect of that in the curriculum, but where do they apply it? And what are the opportunities there? So I do think there's an opportunity for the students to experience those pathways, and does those program of studies allow the students to experience those pathways. Directly connected to that is the opportunity to develop some community and business partnerships. And we're fortunate here in Beverly of what we have around us in the greater vicinity. These businesses, if we can invite these businesses into our classrooms, into our schools, to talk to our students, to share their experiences, I think that can also entice the students about the career pathway that they may be interested in. I think that gives the opportunity to develop some type of internship program, particularly for our classrooms, where they can take what they've learned in the classroom and have an opportunity to do it. My own son was able to experience some type of senior internship program his senior year. It really excited him about his opportunity to go and study law enforcement at the college level. Beverly High School has had a very successful internship program over the last several years. I think this is a really tremendous opportunity here in Beverly to embark upon that. And then also tied into that is the opportunity for a dual enrollment program. Here in Peabody, we're 20 minutes from North Shore Community College, Endicott College, Gordon College, Salem State University. All these opportunities for our students to extend themselves with some dual enrollment programs. I graduated from Merrimack College, and I was just on their website and got something about how they've partnered with the Lawrence Public Schools, and Lawrence Public Schools are sending their some of their students to Merrimack to take college-level courses, either their junior or senior year, for college credit, and that can be transferred over. I think the studies show that when a high school student can successfully complete a college-level course, the odds significantly increase that they will be successful college graduates. So if we're talking about being a college and career readiness and what that's all about, I think we need to investigate and go and listen and learn about all those pathways and make sure Peabody High School students have those opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Poska. And this question actually ties in very well to your answer. And maybe you can expand upon a little bit or touch on a little bit more.
I was hoping to just say ditto, but I guess I have to do a little bit more, all right?
Well, here's the question. For many years, Peabody offered our own on-site vocational training programs to high school students who wish to pursue career in trades such as carpentry and automotive. When the decision was made to join the Essex Tech Regional District, however, we could no longer offer those programs at Peabody High School. And while many Peabody students have been able to benefit from the outstanding vocational programs at Essex Tech, many other students have not. Superintendent Murtagh and I, along with the school committee, are very concerned that these students are getting lost in a traditional college prep curriculum. They are suffering academically and socially, and they need our help. We have partnered with the Essex Tech on a pilot program starting this year to offer a split schedule to some of these students. What ideas do you have to help reach those students that are struggling?
I think my previous answer did touch a little bit upon that, as you said, Mr. Mayor, so students can develop their own pathways and their own interest level. When I think about it, I'm going to attack it from a special ed point of view. One of the things we do when we have a concern about a student on an IEP, we try to create a mirror match program within the district, so a student could possibly remain in district to attend schools there, within the district. I truly believe that we should be keeping Peabody students within Peabody. As you said, Essex Tech is a tremendous opportunity, but I think there's an opportunity to reach out and collaborate with Essex Tech so that these students can have the best of both worlds. I think it's going to take some time. I think we have to listen and learn from the students and the student experiences. I have to assume the students are coming back. I had an opportunity to talk to a gentleman right before I came in there about his son who came back from Essex Tech. And there's nothing the matter with that. We can always come back to our home school, but can we provide those students, and can we work together with a cohort, and can we collaborate with Essex Tech so make sure they get what they need from the Essex Tech from a vocational standpoint to get their trade that they need, but also can we support them with the community aspect that Peabody brings to it, and the idea and the pride of being part of the Peabody Public Schools. So I think it certainly is a challenge, and one that has to be continued to be investigated, but I think it goes back to our own program of studies and the pathways that we are investigating and the opportunities that we're giving our students to experience.
Great. Thank you. Certainly I've had the opportunity to observe, speak to our teachers, and I've certainly learned that the profession is much more than just speaking to students in class. There are certainly social, emotional challenges that are presented every day, and certainly one of the major ones is the opioid epidemic that has rocked our nation. And we, as a city, have been working, like all cities, to try to provide resources. We have a school-based health center here to try to help our students. But maybe you can touch on and walk us through what you would do to help a student who you've been made aware is struggling academically, not showing up to school, and is potentially dealing with some issues regarding drugs. Walk us through how you would handle that.
You know, from a curriculum standpoint, I think it really starts much earlier in the high school, and I think it's a district-wide perspective to talk about educating, you know, the whole student and making sure there's vertical articulation with our health curriculum. You know, certainly, middle school to high school especially. We've taken great steps to address some of the concerns that you're mentioning right now. In the past, I've partnered with the high school to create, bring in speakers, to bring in District Attorney Blodgett to speak to our families and to our students about the dangers, because everyone, with the way the marijuana law has changed recently, in the legalization of it, it's still a gateway drug, and there's still some concerns about what that means. The understanding of what it's all about with vaping and those concerns that we have there, making sure students understand the dangers are involved in that. But as we get into the more prevalent issues that you're referring to, it's important that, it goes back to, I said before, about making sure our staff know our students. Can we read some of the signs that are occurring, and how can we reach to those students and reach out to those families before we get to that crisis level? It's important that we have connections with our community partnerships for those wraparound services. I partner a lot currently with Leahy Mental Health to come in to work with our students. At this aspect, particularly the middle school aspect, it's more of a mental health type of component, but I certainly believe there's other aspects that Leahy provides, and other wraparound services within the community can provide to support our students. At this piece here, it really is about, the example you mentioned is really about kind of restorative practices. Certainly, there's a concern here, and we need to provide the students what they need to become healthy, lifelong learners. So what is it they need? They're going to need certainly some medical support, some mental health and counseling support, but at the same time, can we provide them an opportunity with some education, whether through a credit recovery program or something like that, to continue working towards their degree, because we still want to keep them active, involved in the school, because certainly I think what we see is this is, for many of our students, school is their safest place to be and their healthiest place to be. So we want to make sure that this is a safe and welcoming environment. So if we can try to provide some of those services within the school, or bring those services into the school to support our students, have an increased opportunity for success to address the concerns that you brought up.
Thank you. Next question. The city of Peabody instituted a community service requirement for graduation for our students here at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, 40 hours over the course of their high school career. We felt as a city, a school committee, that there was value in working with the community and learning about some of the aspects that people deal with in their lives and helping in a variety of ways. Have you been involved in programs such as that, and can you talk about the value you see in that type of work?
I have not been involved in a program like that at this level. There are varied community service opportunities at the middle school level that we promote, particularly amongst our National Junior Honor Society students. I think what excites me about that opportunity is it really, aligns with the vision. I think the vision mission statement talks about college and career readiness and positive contributors to society. So I think that idea of kind of putting our money where our mouth is about, if we say this is what our mission, we want to give back to the community, and we want Peabody students to understand what the community is all about. I think there's tremendous value in it. I think it also ties into who we are as a community. There's tremendous pride and joy about being from Peabody, and I think students have to understand what it's all about and who came before them and the opportunity to give back. In this day and age, there's a lot of taking going on, and I think we have to teach our students through community service and through volunteering that there's equal value and even more value into giving back as well. So I think that does tie in with who the community is about and what the mission of the school is all about. So I'd be excited to continue to support that, and I think that does tie in with the varied pathways that are in place as well, particularly the opportunity maybe to investigate some of those internship programs and what that's all about and how they can continue to give back to the community in that way.
Mr. Poska, at this time, we've learned a lot about you, and you can do a closing statement if you would like.
Come to the end, huh?
Coming to the end.
I think as part of the opening statement, you talked about why Peabody High School, and I probably didn't answer it as well as I should have. I'm entering my 14th year as a successful school principal. Beverly has become a second home. There's been opportunities to leave, and the timing wasn't right. But I think it demonstrates the loyalty that I have in this profession, and I think that's very, very important. I wouldn't be leaving for just any place, and the allure of coming to Peabody is exciting. I see there's an opportunity to create and be part of one of the top academic programs on the North Shore. I think there's an opportunity to create and be part of a performing arts curriculum and department that everybody wants to come and see and hear. And I think there's an opportunity to have an athletic program that is not only well respected and successful in Northeastern Conference, but also in Eastern Massachusetts. I think there's a lot of things in place for that to occur. I'm excited about that opportunity. I mentioned at my previous interview a quote by Jimmy Cassis, who is a educator and a motivator, and in this day and age, he said we can't accept average as the new standard in education, and I truly believe that. And there's nothing average, and there should be nothing average about Peabody High School. I do believe that we are Peabody, and I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm excited about being here, and I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Poska.
Thank you.
Next, I just want.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, I just wanted to tell you about next steps. Thank you for that. But next steps, the mayor and I are continuing our finalist interviews this evening, and then the next step would be a site visit to narrow that down, and then to the site visits to the schools. So,
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Bring it back together. We're just going to bring it back together. I don't think it's on. Okay, oh, there we go. Perfect.
Right.
Sure.
All right.
Again, good evening, everyone. We are here now for our fourth and final interview of the day. Again, excellent candidate who did well during the initial interview and was forwarded to us for a further interview to get to know you a bit. And it's great to have you here, and I wanted to welcome Brooke Randall to Peabody High School today and for the interview.
Thank you.
So why don't we start off just kind of a simple question.
Sure.
I'll be asking you some questions along with Ms. Murtagh.
Yep.
Certainly give you the opportunity at the end to maybe make a concluding statement. And if you have any questions during the process, please let us know.
Sure, of course.
But why don't we start off with something just to kind of get things going with an opening. Talk about why you're interested in this position as the principal of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School and why you believe you're the right person to lead us forward.
Absolutely. No, thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for coming tonight. I know it's a late evening on a summer night, and there's very few of those left, so I do appreciate everybody who's turned out and everybody who's tuning in, too. As the mayor said, my name's Brooke Randall. I am excited to be here. I know this is kind of a two-part question of why Peabody and what makes me qualified for this position right now. I was expecting that as kind of a lead-off a little bit. So every time I thought that in my head, kind of well, why Peabody Veterans Memorial High School? And every time the first words that came to my mind were, because it's home. You know, it's like coming home. And I know that's kind of strange and kind of cheesy too, but I didn't grow up here. I'm not born and raised in Peabody. I'm not even from this state. But the truth of the matter is the city of Peabody and this school and a lot of people in the audience today, in fact, kind of had a hand in raising me in a way, certainly educationally, and in my role as an educator and in developing into a leader. I spent the first 11 years of my educational career here in this building. I'm very passionate about this school. I don't think I've ever stopped bleeding blue, even though the last couple of years I've been away from Peabody. And so when I learned about the opening here, the reaction was immediate. It was, this is something I'm ready for. This is a place that I want to be. This is a place I'm passionate about. Right before coming down here, I was up in the main office and working out those pregame jitters a little bit and just sort of walking around the office, and I was looking at all the student pictures behind one of the admin assistant's desk, seeing a lot of familiar faces, and it just made me smile. It's those students, it's those alumni that I've made connections with and those families that really made this an intriguing opportunity for me, and I said, this is a place that I really want to come back to, and this is a place I want to be. The second part of your question there was, what makes me prepared for this role? And, again, just kind of going back to, this is the place that I got my start. I cut my teeth here as a teacher back in 2006. Came in as a first-year teacher, very green. I had been in the business world for 4 years. I didn't even come out with a degree in education, first and foremost, right? But I knew I wanted to work with kids. I knew I wanted to coach them athletically and work with them in the classroom. And Peabody gave me my start. I'm prepared for this role right now because I came through this system. And to me, an effective leader is one that can come through an organization and work through many levels of that organization and really understand how it runs and operates. And so not only was I a classroom teacher here at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, but I grew into my first leadership role as a department head here. So I understand what it's like to be a teacher here, first and foremost. I understand what it's like to be a department leader here and just lead one group of your peers and colleagues. But I also understand what it's like to be an administrator here. Of course, from my resume, as I'm sure you've seen, I was a dean of students here for 3 years before leaving the last 2 years to continue to grow professionally in a role of assistant principal at another high school. So what makes me ready for this position, I think I know this school. I know maybe not what this particular role entails just yet, but what a lot of roles coming up before it did. So I can speak to those, opening my door to teachers and other administrators in the building. I've been there, I've done that. So I think there's value in that as well. And then the last couple of years, stepping away to, like I said, grow a little bit more professionally as an assistant principal in another building. Was very eye-opening, learned a lot, extremely valuable in a lot of ways, and I feel like those couple years of experience in that role has really kind of catapulted me to that next step to be ready for a role like this. You know, after being in a school for 11 years and then stepping away, you not only get to see a different perspective of kind of what goes on in another building and kind of think to yourself, oh, I really like the way that we do this in this other building. And you can't help but think back to where you came from and, oh, you know, they could really incorporate this. This would really help them over, you know, at Peabody, you know, high school. But you also get to appreciate what's done here that when you're in the moment, you might not appreciate so much. You know, just things like visibility in this high school is amazing. You know, just from the teachers around in the hallway, you can walk through this building at any point in the school day, you can hear a pin drop in the hallways because students are where they're supposed to be. You know, that's just one example. Whereas, you know, it's not always that way in other high schools, and you can kind of be chasing some kids around from time to time. So you come to appreciate things that do happen in a school building as well. So just kind of coming around on that, I think that it was my past experience here at Peabody, along with really growing as an educational leader in the last couple of years in a role of an assistant principal, that really truly makes me ready to lead this school into the future.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. You're welcome. I have the next question, and
Sure.
it's an academic question.
Sure.
No, not yet. Sorry.
okay.
Sorry. This one's about the population.
Sure.
With a diverse student population of 1,430 students and a staff of 130, how will you build trust and camaraderie amongst your leadership team, the faculty and staff, and departments?
Sure. Yeah, that's huge. And trust and building relationships, that's not something that there's just a quick fix for that happens overnight. Success is a process. But, you know, to really obtain that, and that's first and foremost, culture is paramount to anything else that happens in a school building. Even before the curriculum and the lessons of, you know, math, science, social studies, English in the classroom, culture is number one. And so to build that up, I think it comes down to strong communication, a sense of transparency with everything that you do. You know, obviously sometimes when we have closed-door meetings with leadership, sometimes there's things that have to stay within the room there. But for whatever can be shared out with faculty, you know, that's what I would want to do. It's you know, it's something where I'd want to communicate out with the staff about, you know, what our mission is, what our vision is, be consistent in that message, show that I'm consistent, walk that walk, you know, and just be here every day with the enthusiasm that I bring, with the positivity that I bring, and never let that light dim out. I think that just kind of being that leader and being that presence and that first face that you see, and trying to always bring that positivity every day and stay consistent with that is kind of huge for culture overall. And I know particularly you asked about building trust. I think trust comes when you keep with that consistency. You know, so if you're always delivering that same message, you're never wavering from it. You know, you're listening to your staff and what their needs are, doing what you can to support all staff, all students, all administrators. But again, in my mind, I just keep coming back to that word consistency. You know, and I think over time, that's what really truly builds trust within an organization, within a team, within a family, and certainly within a staff.
Thank you. Sure. The next part of that question
Yeah.
How are students going to know that you are vested in their health, safety, academic needs, and their school community?
Sure. Again, with building off of consistency, but I think kind of first and foremost, again, I'd be the face of this building, right? So, you know, each day I'd want every student to start their day with a positive start, a positive vibes coming in. So when they're coming into that school building, I want to be the first face that they see. I want to be standing there greeting them, telling them, hey, have a great day today, you know, do the best that you possibly can, and just staying consistent with that and staying visible with the students, you know, right first thing in the morning, walking through their classrooms, talking with them, sitting down with them, down in their social areas, down in the cafeteria, out at sporting events, here in the auditorium for fine arts events, all kinds of things. I truly would be that visible principal, and show that, and not just say that, but show up for them. Show up, have those conversations, build those connections, with each different type of classroom within the school, with each different type of organization that happens within the school, and so just being consistent with that. And if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Murtagh, would you mind just rereading that part of the question back? Just I want to make sure that I really answered every part of your question.
Sure. How are students going to know that you are vested in their health, safety, academic needs, and their school community?
Okay. So safety is also a big one to me too. Because when I think safety and having students know that I'm vested in their safety, that's big to me. I think I mentioned that in the first interview a couple of weeks ago. Safety to me takes on a couple of meanings. It means their physical safety, certainly, and I know there's amazing supports in this building from from guidance counselors to crisis counselors to the nursing staff to our SROs. There's amazing supports in this building to come in and help support students with any of their physical safety, but also their emotional safety as well. So I think it's promoting that message and making sure that every student knows what adult that they can go to in the building for support for that emotional safety or physical safety is extremely important. I was happy to see, as I looked through the program of studies recently, that there's a new course for all freshmen that they have to take, right? This freshman seminar, which really intrigued by, because when I clicked on it, I could only read a little brief blurb about it. But I love that the young students are coming in and finding out right away who the staff in the building is, who they could go to, who they could turn to. That's amazing, I think, but students need those reminders too as they become older students of, kind of who to go to. So that consistent message of here's where you go to if for any reason you're not feeling safe in any way. So thank you for rereading that. The safety really jumped out to me, and I was glad I was able to speak to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. I have a scenario question for you.
Sure.
You have just returned to your office at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School following a meeting outside the building, and you are handed 4 messages that are all marked important. Mm-hmm. First, a phone call from the mayor of the city who has a pressing question regarding the transportation budget. Number 2, a phone call from the police chief who needs to speak to you about a safety concern in the high school cafeteria. Number 3, a phone call from a parent who is upset with the football coach about his son's playing time. And number 4, a phone call from a teacher who says she overheard 2 students discussing a potential bullying scenario on social media. In what order would you return the calls and why?
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I have those.
Yeah, I can run through those
down,
again.
if you wouldn't mind.
Number 1, a phone call from the mayor of the city who has a pressing question regarding the transportation budget. Number 2, a phone call from the police chief who needs to speak to you about a safety concern in the high school cafeteria. Number 3, a phone call from a parent who is upset with the football coach about his son's playing time. Number 4, a phone call from a teacher who says she overheard 2 students discussing a potential bullying scenario on social media. In what order would you return those calls and why?
Thank you. Absolutely, the first call is back to the police chief. If there's anything going on with the student safety, whether it's a current situation or maybe something that just happened in the cafeteria, that is absolutely the first call that I'm making back to find out about that scenario. Do you need me to elaborate on the phone calls at all, or just get back to you on the order there?
Yep, just the order. And
Just the
certainly
order.
if you want to touch on why.
Sure.
Want to
I mean, right, first and foremost, if going back to safety being paramount, if there's any student that is unsafe in this building, that absolutely needs immediate attention. So that would be first. A quick very close second is getting back in touch with the teacher about the two students and a possible bullying situation going on social media. To find out a little bit more about what's going on there. Hopefully, if they weren't able to reach me, they've contacted the appropriate house dean, and the ball's already rolling there, but that would certainly be a very close second of a phone call that I would return there. Sorry to push you to number 3, Mayor, but you'd be my 3rd call on the list. Just to give you a call back, really, to let you know that I got the message,
Yep.
And see if it really was a pressing thing that we needed to talk about right in that moment, or could we set a time aside to further discuss the transportation budget, and to let you know there was a delay, and update you also on what's going on inside the building as well. The final call to the parent about the football coach, that's not one that I would even engage in conversation too much with, but I certainly would return the call to let that parent know that that call was received. That's important. But I would direct them appropriately to the athletic director, or ask them if they have spoken already with the athletic director and get a little bit more information there. You know, I wouldn't necessarily, even though I'm returning all of these calls, to make sure I'm checking those boxes and again, communicating effectively. There's a lot of things here that would end up getting delegated as far as the very next steps of action. I definitely wouldn't be necessarily handling from A to Z all the details, you know, of these. We'd incorporate some other players here, whether it's deans, athletic directors, and whatnot. So, but that would be my order.
Thank you, Ms. Randall.
You're welcome.
This is the academic question.
Academic question.
Peabody Veterans Memorial High School is a comprehensive high school. Our rigorous curriculum aligns to the Massachusetts state standards. What steps will you take to ensure that our students are getting what they need to be empowered, enriched, enhanced academically, or improving academic achievement?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So I want to first and foremost make sure that our students are getting supported right at the classroom level. To me, that starts with the classroom teachers and the building connections with students right in the classroom. And I know I spoke a bit about that also at the first interview, so I'll move past that as well here. But to me, yes, to make sure the students are getting what they need, make sure that they're getting any sort of diversified instruction or enhanced instruction. I think that starts, though, too, with the teachers really getting to know the student. It just kind of go back to that's the way that I was as a teacher in the classroom. For me, it was building connections first. And if I got to know my students, I really understood over a little bit of time what it was that they individually needed from me. So to me, that's first and foremost, is kind of building the connections there at the classroom level. I think it's important that our teachers in those classrooms also are equipped with, their list of different interventions, their tier 1 interventions that they can always be using with students, being aware of what our DCAP says, and kind of knowing when it is appropriate too. I'm starting to think about the student that might need a little bit more support first, kind of knowing when it's time to either refer that student to an SAT team, a student requiring assistance, or a student assistance team, whatever might be in place here at the high school currently, and whatever method there is in place for referring a student for a little bit more help, or conversing with a guidance counselor or other staff. But really it starts at that classroom level, making those connections with students, really getting to understand their needs, whether they need to have something a little bit more remedial, a little more help in the classroom, or need to be pushed there as well. And if it is, something where they need a little bit more support outside the classroom, knowing how to refer them and how to get them those tiered intervention supports that they might need. I know would you mind reading back on that question one more time?
Sure. What steps will you take to ensure that our students are getting what they need to be empowered, enriched, enhance their academic achievement? You touched on the improvement.
Sure. So to enhance as well, I think kind of just going back to that comes back to kind of structuring scaffolding in the classroom as well a little bit, and finding those additional supports for students. I know that the program of studies is just so full of wonderful opportunities for students, the amount of AP opportunities that are here, the honors classes, the enriching courses that are here. So it's, as a student grows older in their academic progress, it's kind of knowing, okay, what should that student be recommended for? And it's not, what can they be sort of pushed to? What's a class that will not only challenge them, but they won't be over their head. So where's that fine balance? And again, kind of coming back to making those first connections with those students to kind of know and be able to recommend appropriately for what will, where will they be enhanced in their learning process. Yeah, you're welcome.
So a question for you. For many years, Peabody offered our own on-site vocational training programs to high school students who wish to pursue careers in trades such as carpentry and automotive. Mm-hmm. When the decision was made a few years ago to join the Essex Tech Regional District, however, we could no longer offer those programs at Peabody High School. And while many Peabody students have been able to benefit from the outstanding vocational offerings at Essex Tech, many of our students have not. Right. Superintendent Murtagh and I, along with the members of the school committee, are very concerned that these students are getting lost in a traditional college prep curriculum. They are suffering academically and socially, and they need our help. We have partnered with the Essex Tech on a pilot program this year to offer a split schedule to some of these students. What ideas do you have to help reach those students that are struggling?
Is this the first year that the pilot is going to be in place? Yes, we're just starting that
this year.
Absolutely. No, first off, I think that's wonderful. I think if you can find any opportunity to find opportunities for those students, outside of school. So, sorry, would you mind, Mayor, just kind of going back and reading your question one more time?
Superintendent Murtagh and I, along with school committee members, are very concerned that those students that are not able to take advantage of the vocational opportunities that are at Essex Tech, are suffering academically and socially here and looking for help. What ideas do you have to help reach those students that are struggling and potentially giving them opportunities?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, that opportunity that you just mentioned in creating that pilot program and in that split day where maybe they could take some of their core academics in the morning and then go over and have that more hands-on experience. I think, in the meantime, too, with some of those students, once we've identified them, if we can, find opportunities, get them into some of the other programs that do currently exist within the school, kind of get them through some of the maybe one of the vocational programs that we do have currently running, just to kind of get them a little bit more hands-on kind of experience there. I think if they're struggling both academically and socially a little bit, there's so many supports here too in the building, between the student health center, between the the guidance department, between the deans in the school as well. Just kind of having those interventions, working with families, having families in for those conversations, and really just trying to meet them at where they are at. I think it's a tricky question, just in that, if we're talking about a particular subset of students, and maybe it's the students that would benefit from that more outplacement or going over to Essex Tech for a partial day, I'd want to know, have we used up all the different opportunities that we do have here at the high school for their support? Have we looked into, are they a good candidate maybe for the PLA? Do they qualify maybe to be part of our community school program? Just have we had those parents in for discussions? Have we worked through every possible mode that we could have to help make some interventions for that student? But yeah, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to be partnering once again with Essex Tech. If the student hasn't gotten in there full time, to be able to go over there for even a partial day, I think that's a wonderful opportunity. But again, there's so many wonderful supports right here in this building to help students who might be struggling academically and socially. Are we identifying them at the classroom level early enough, and maybe trying as many different interventions here and supports that we possibly can?
Thank you.
Thanks.
So one thing that I have learned as mayor, more importantly as a parent, and observing and watching our teachers, listening to our teachers, is that the teaching profession is so much more than just classroom instruction. There's social challenges, emotional challenges every day. And one of the biggest ones, maybe the biggest, is the opioid epidemic that has rocked our nation. I want to see if you could maybe walk through how you would assist a student that's been identified as a student that's struggling potentially with a drug issue. They're academic, they have academic struggles, their attendance is poor. How would you assist that student, if you could walk us through?
Sure. Unfortunately, I've been in a situation like that. So it's unfortunate, but I don't have to imagine having to assist a student with that. So, you know, it really, it's sitting down, it's letting that student know that you're there for them. I mean, I'm thinking back on a particular student that I worked with here at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School a few years back. And, you know, it started off tough. You know, it kind of started off with a situation inside of school where there was an issue. There was an issue with actually, it was an overdose issue. And so what happened initially right off the bat there was it started with making a very early personal connection with a student, even taking an ambulance ride with that student. But from there on, to support that student, who I'm still close with to this day, it was daily checking in with them. It was creating a relationship with that student's family, even when sometimes they were reluctant to have that relationship with me, but not giving up on that student. And consistently, just, again, going back to just being consistent with that student. You know, kind of having all of their different supports in place. I happen to be the dean of that student, but having their guidance counselor very close by. Academically, that student struggled, that they had behavior issues in the classroom. You know, the opioid was the Band-Aid for what was really going on. So I think part of that was really digging in deep and having those real conversations of some of the underlying reasons for choosing to use. You know, and then ultimately finding, you know, after working through tiered supports, as I mentioned before, and finding that nothing was working too well, this was a student that did ultimately find some success with the community school program, and that worked out well. But it's really taking every step of the journey with them. And if it is a situation where, and this was a very promising academic student who, you know, even if maybe they needed more social emotional support during their school day, before they finish high school, and we're creating, you know, talking about what are their goals for beyond high school, how can we maybe get them back into a little bit of the regular educational day setting too? So how can we continue to push that student when they're ready, meet them where they're at, give them those intense supports that they may need in that moment, but how can we, when they're ready for it, continue to help them grow here as a person as well? So I hope it was okay. I just kind of related that back to a personal experience, but yeah, it is a pretty major thing. It's a crisis, but having been there before, you know, it's meeting those students where they're at, and as intense and as real as you need to get, and maybe sometimes as invasive as you might need to get into their world. But it's important. It's important for their success. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
I've always been touched by, we have so many teachers that have given that little extra to students, and that means so much. So thank you for that story. Question I have, I think you are aware from your years at Peabody High School that we instituted a community service requirement to graduate, 40 hours over the course of your high school career. School committee, school administration, we thought that that was a valuable lesson for students to learn, to have them engage in the community, see other people and some of the challenges that the community faces. Could you maybe talk about your experiences, if you have any, with the community service, and do you see value in that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely see value in the community service piece, especially for a graduation requirement. I believe it was sort of in the works that last year that I was here, and it was a 40-hour commitment for graduation. I absolutely see the benefit in that. I think it's crucial for students to be able to kind of push themselves a little bit outside their comfort zones and kind of get out there and work within their community. You know, and it doesn't always it doesn't need to be just some of those, you know, kind of getting out and, you know, maybe helping at a soup kitchen or things like that. I mean, that's a wonderful way to get, you know, find some community service. I think, you know, in what ways could we open that up even within our school? Knowing that we have a very diverse student body, how can we maybe combine the two? Maybe some community service, maybe in different parts of the city. You know, students working with other students that they might not always get the opportunity to work with or be grouped with or have conversations with inside a school in their classes, but they know they're walking the same halls with them. Can we try to find some of those community service opportunities for students to work together? I think that creates empathy for others. I think it's a way to kind of work towards a community service requirement for graduation. But in my mind, yes, I love the idea of the community service requirement. I'd love to see it grow within the school and try to develop some opportunities here for students to work together to do that. As far as my own personal involvement with community service, yeah, you know, just helping out. Just thinking of this past year, I helped a student out with her Cradles to Crayons initiative, and it was a huge clothing drive within all of the elementary schools, and she wanted to house it at the high school and asked me to help out. And this is just the most recent one that comes to my mind, but she was very successful. So just helping her get the word out, get the flyers out, helping her do the, you know, kind of get her whole program up and running for that. And she engaged other students in that activity as well. But that's just a recent one. But again, working within the school and working within the other elementary schools too. So finding that opportunity. Speaking of which, I think just two students, high school students working with high school students, maybe in, you know, as I mentioned before, just kind of working with maybe some students or peers that they don't necessarily have in their classroom sitting right next to them, but they know are walking the halls along with them, is a great opportunity. But also, you know, can we as a high school maybe create a little bit more of some mentorship to the younger schools as well too? So how are our high school students working with our elementary grades or our middle school students? Are there opportunities there, you know, to show leadership and also be working within the frame of community service? Great. So I definitely think it's an important thing to continue.
Thank you.
Sure.
And you mentioned the clothing drive,
Yeah.
crayons to cradle to crayons.
Yeah.
I did want to mention that City of Peabody, we had the most successful clothing drive in the state of Massachusetts for the last 7 years. Our Project 351 ambassadors this year, Michaela Alperin and Carson Brown, did a terrific job. So
Amazing.
Peabody won.
Oh. Kudos.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. Thank
Sure, you're welcome.
So at this time, Ms. Randall,
Sure.
if you'd like to give a wrap-up statement,
Sure.
closing statement.
Sure. So again, I first and foremost just want to thank you both for the opportunity, you know, to be here today. You know, I want to thank you for the opportunity to even come in for the first round interview and meet with that amazing group of folks that you pulled together for the committee. Thanks to them as well. Again, like I said in my opening statement, this opportunity to come back to Peabody High School and to lead this school it would truly be an honor. Again, I as I said from the start, I've never stopped bleeding blue and white. I know that's kind of a cheesy thing to say there, but it's really true. I've been away from this school for 2 years, again, gaining some extremely valuable experience where I've been. But, I've kept in touch with my colleagues here, and some of them might tell you, when anybody would ask, well, how's it going? How do you like the new school? I'm like, I miss my kids from Peabody. I just do. Everybody here, it's just a hardworking city, a lot of grit, a lot of determination, a lot of resilience, and I miss that. And, just to have this opportunity to come back here and work with the amazing students of this city and families and stellar staff who it's student first all the time. These are I still consider you all my colleagues, and I hope maybe we once in the near future will be again. But, it truly would be an honor to come back and lead this school into the future. And I just really thank you all for the opportunity, and again, thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Ms. Randall.
Sure.
I just wanted to let you know the next steps. So we're finishing up finalist interviews, and next steps will be a site visit to whoever makes it. We're going to process things, and we'll do site visits next.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
So again, I want to take just a moment to thank all of you for being here. I know there's many people watching. And please, we met 4 very strong candidates that offer a lot. Very important decision we're going to make for our future. And please, if you have thoughts that you wanted to share, we'd love to hear from you, both Ms. Murtagh and myself. And ultimately, I know probably we'll be thinking of little else over the next few days. So please share your thoughts with the school committee, school administration. Please reach out to me, Ms. Murtagh. We want to hear from you and hear your thoughts. But really, it was so important, and I'm very thankful to have all of you here today. And I think we can wrap up. Thank you.